After my grandfather left me everything, my parents, who abandoned me as a baby, sued me. When I entered the courtroom, Mom rolled her eyes. Then the judge paused. You know, sometimes, the deepest betrayals don't come from strangers, but from the very blood that's supposed to connect you. I found myself in court, fighting for my grandparents' legacy, not against some faceless corporation, but against my own parents, the very people who abandoned me as a baby, now trying to claim what was never theirs. It was a fight for justice, yes, but more than that, it was a fight for the truth of what family really means. They thought Judge Avery, who had been mentored by my grandfather, would bend over backward to seem impartial, maybe even favor them. They clearly didn't understand grandfather at all. Impartiality wasn't just a rule for him. It was a sacred principle, something he would instill in anyone he thought worthy. And he definitely instilled it in me. Very well, Judge Avery nodded, his voice steady. Opening statements then. Mr. Dale? My mother's lawyer, Richard Dale, a man dripping with slick confidence, buttoned his jacket and strode toward the bench. Your Honor, he began, his voice booming a little too loud, this case is straightforward. My stomach clenched. Judge Franklin Cole was a respected jurist, a beloved community member. But in his final years, after his wife June passed, he fell under the influence of his granddaughter, the defendant. He gestured vaguely in my direction, not even looking at me. Miss Wright, he went on, spitting the words like poison, manipulated an elderly man suffering from declining faculties to divert a substantial estate away from his only living child, his daughter Celeste Wright, and her husband Gavin, who should rightfully inherit under normal circumstances. The words felt like a physical blow, slicing through the air, aimed right at my character. I focused on my breathing, just like grandfather taught me during my very first mock trial in high school. In. Hold. Out. The facts will speak. My attorney, Amelia, squeezed my wrist once, a silent message of support, before rising from her chair. Her voice, when she spoke, carried the soft lilt of Georgia, but with the steel-edged precision of 20 years arguing before the Supreme Court. Your Honor, the plaintiff's characterization ignores 3 decades of documented history. She moved forward, her stance relaxed but purposeful. Franklin Cole changed his will 10 years ago, when his mental faculties were unquestionably intact, as his physician will testify. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. The plaintiffs, Celeste and Gavin Wright, abandoned their daughter, my client, when she was 4 months old, leaving her with Judge Cole and his wife, June. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. 3 decades of love and presence speak louder than accusations from those who chose absence. This case isn't about manipulation. It's about recognition of the true definition of family, those who stay. The word stay hung in the air between us, a silent accusation against the people sitting across the room. I kept my eyes fixed forward, refusing to be baited into looking at the parents who never stayed for a single childhood illness, a school play, or a graduation. The parents who now wanted what grandfather built, what he chose to leave to me. I thought of countless Sunday afternoons with grandfather on the porch swing, watching neighborhood children play catch with their fathers, while I pretended not to notice the hollow ache in my chest. I remembered grandmother June's gentle hands braiding my hair for school, teaching me to bake her lemon poppy seed cake, tending her hibiscus garden that exploded with crimson blooms each summer. They stayed. They chose me every day for 32 years. And now I would defend that choice, that love, against the blood ties that had proven thinner than water. The battle for my grandfather's legacy and my own had truly begun. The courtroom's heavy oak doors swung open as court reconvened after lunch. My mother, Celeste, was dabbing at her lipstick, the same coral shade she wore in the single photo she sent on my 16th birthday. My father, Gavin, straightened his tie with manicured fingers that had never once braided my hair or wiped away my tears. Amelia slid a manila folder towards me. They've submitted financial statements claiming your grandfather abandoned your mother financially. My fingers traced the folder's edge. He sent them money for 22 years. Exactly. Amelia's eyes gleamed with the satisfaction of someone holding a royal flush. $3,200 every month. $845,000 total. I have the canceled checks and bank statements. Richard Dale strode to the front like a game show host, oozing confidence. Your Honor, we'd like to present evidence of Judge Cole's deteriorating mental state over the past decade. Judge Avery nodded. Proceed. Dale gestured toward a stack of documents. We have testimony suggesting Judge Cole became increasingly confused about his finances and family relationships. I clenched my jaw so tight my molars ached. Grandfather reviewed Supreme Court cases the week before he died. He debated constitutional law over Sunday roast, just days before his heart failed. Additionally, Dale continued, we believe Miss Wright exercised undue influence over her grandfather, isolating him from his daughter. My mother dabbed at her eyes again with that monogrammed handkerchief. The Cole family crest, 3 oak leaves, representing strength, longevity, and wisdom, seemed to mock her performance from its embroidered corner. Amelia rose, smooth as water. Your Honor, if I may, we've prepared documentation that tells quite a different story. She approached with a leather binder. These are June Cole's journals, spanning 30 years. The courtroom rustled like autumn leaves as Amelia opened to a flagged page. December 18, 1998. Celeste promised a visit for Christmas. Bought Mackenzie that red bicycle she wanted, in case her mother asks what she'd like. Wrapped Celeste's gift too. 4th Christmas she's missed. My mother's face hardened into marble. And this, Amelia continued, extracting a thick folder, contains Judge Cole's phone logs. Highlighted calls show attempts to reach Mr. Wright regarding school events, medical emergencies, and graduations. None returned. She placed a photo album on the evidence table. And finally, Your Honor, photographs documenting 32 years of milestones. Kindergarten graduation. Middle school honor roll. High school valedictorian speech. Law school commencement. Judge Avery leaned forward. And the plaintiffs? Absent in every photograph, Your Honor. My father shifted in his seat, eyes fixed on his Italian leather shoes. My mother's perfectly painted fingernails drummed against the table. During the short recess, I escaped to the courthouse garden, where hibiscus flowers bloomed in riotous red against the limestone walls. Grandmother June planted hibiscus everywhere. Life still blossoms even after someone leaves, she would say while watering them, not a hint of bitterness in her voice, just the quiet wisdom of a woman who had watched her only daughter walk away from her own child. I touched a velvety petal and suddenly I was 7 again, standing on a kitchen chair, helping grandmother measure ingredients for her lemon poppy seed bundt cake. Baking is about precision and patience, she'd say, just like life, Mackenzie. When court resumed, something shifted inside me. This wasn't just about defending my inheritance anymore. It was about protecting their memory, the people who stayed, who chose me every single day while my parents chose absence. You okay? Amelia whispered, noticing my straightened posture. Yes, I said, a new resolve settling in my chest. I'm ready. Amelia smiled. You remind me of your grandfather on the bench right now. The afternoon brought a parade of witnesses who knew us, who knew the truth. Doris Taylor, the court clerk who worked with grandfather for 3 decades, described his sharp mind and unwavering ethics. Dr. Reynolds testified to grandfather's excellent cognitive function until his final days. Then Martha Wilson took the stand, our housekeeper of 25 years. Her silver hair was pulled into the same neat bun she wore when bandaging my skinned knees and teaching me how to iron grandfather's shirts. Every Sunday, Martha said, her voice steady despite Dale's aggressive questioning. Without fail, Miss Mackenzie prepared Sunday dinner with Judge Cole. Even after she moved to her own apartment, even during law school exams, she'd cook his favorite pot roast, set the table with Mrs. Cole's good china. And after June Cole died? Amelia asked gently. Martha's eyes found mine. Miss Mackenzie never missed a Sunday, not one in 10 years. She'd bring fresh flowers for the table, hibiscus when they were in season, because those were her grandmother's favorite. I blinked rapidly, fighting tears. In the gallery behind me, colleagues from the prosecutor's office filled 3 rows. People who'd watched me build cases against financial fraudsters now witnessed me defending the most personal case of my life. Dale rose for cross-examination. Martha, Isn't it true that Mackenzie Wright controlled who had access to Judge Cole in his final years? No, sir, that isn't true, Martha replied without hesitation. Judge Cole made his own decisions until the day he passed. Miss Mackenzie respected his wishes, that's all. A flash of frustration crossed Dale's face. Motion to strike the witness's personal opinions from the record. Denied, Judge Avery said, almost too quickly. The witness is describing observed behaviors, not opinions. Dale shifted tactics. Your Honor, we move to dismiss Judge Cole's personal journals as hearsay evidence. Judge Avery removed his glasses, polishing them deliberately. Motion denied. The journals constitute contemporaneous documentation and will remain admissible. My mother's face tightened. My father leaned to whisper something in her ear, his eyes darting toward the exit. The first hints of victory fluttered in my chest. Then, Judge Avery admitted into evidence grandfather's final handwritten letter, the one he wrote a week before his heart attack, explaining why he changed his will a decade ago. The decision wasn't made in haste or confusion, he had written. It was made with clarity after watching for 20 years, which family member demonstrated the meaning of the word. My mother's hands trembled slightly as she accepted a glass of water from Dale. For the first time since the proceedings began, I allowed myself to believe that truth might actually prevail against the determined fiction my parents had constructed. And somewhere between the stack of financial records and the decades of documented absence, I found something unexpected, the strength that comes from knowing exactly who I am and where I belong. Not because of whose blood runs through my veins, but because of whose values run through my heart. The Charleston Post and Courier landed on my doorstep with a thud that echoed through the empty hallway. I didn't need to unfold it to know what was there. My mother's face, carefully composed in tragic beauty, stared from below the fold. Family estate battle divides Charleston legacy, screamed the headline. I forced myself to read the article. Celeste described being systematically alienated from her father's affection. She wept about the calculated effort to turn Franklin Cole against his only daughter, not one word acknowledging the 4-month-old baby she abandoned on her parents' doorstep. The phone rang before I finished. Mackenzie Wright? The voice was unfamiliar. Gruff. Speaking. You should be ashamed. Stealing from your own mother. The line went dead. 3 more calls followed, all strangers, all convinced by Celeste's theater of tears. By noon, my office voicemail filled with messages questioning my integrity. The prosecuting attorney who manipulated her elderly grandfather. The ungrateful daughter denying her parents their rightful inheritance. Their words burrowed under my skin like splinters. I stood at the window of grandfather's study, watching rain beat against century-old glass. The garden lay dormant, grandmother's prized hibiscus waiting for warmer days. My reflection stared back, shoulders slightly hunched, a posture grandmother June would have corrected with a gentle touch. Stand tall, Mackenzie, she would say, like my hibiscus flowers. On the bookshelf behind me, leather-bound journals lined up like sentinels. I traced their spines, pausing at one bound in green fabric, June's gardening journal. I hadn't opened it since her passing 3 years ago. Inside, her elegant script detailed planting schedules and soil conditions, but in the margins, something else caught my eye. Life lessons written as if in conversation with the plants she tended. Hibiscus survive winter when everything appears dead, she wrote beside a sketch of crimson blooms. The strongest flowers emerge from the coldest winters. Remember this, Mackenzie. My name, written in her hand, released something tight in my chest. On the desk sat another treasure, a leather notebook grandfather gave me at my law school graduation. Inside the cover, his precise handwriting, "Ethics aren't situational, Mackenzie. They're the foundation upon which justice stands." I remembered watching him on the bench years ago, a summer internship that confirmed my path to law. A defendant had accused him of bias. Franklin Cole hadn't flinched. Justice isn't revenge, he told me afterward. It's the restoration of truth. And truth. The words settled in my mind like a stone in still water. I would not dishonor their memory with bitterness. I straightened my spine and lifted my chin. Stand tall like the hibiscus. The courthouse buzzed with anticipation the following morning. My mother took the stand, dabbing at manufactured tears with practiced precision. Her cashmere sweater, robin's egg blue, not navy, complemented her complexion perfectly. My father abandoned me, she testified, her voice breaking artfully. When Mackenzie came along, it was as if I ceased to exist. Richard Dale guided her through carefully scripted testimony. Your relationship with your daughter? I tried, Celeste whispered, but Franklin and June wouldn't allow it. They turned her against me. The gallery murmured sympathetically. I kept my face neutral, fingers pressed against grandmother's pearl earring in my pocket, a grounding touch. Amelia rose for cross-examination, a stack of documents in hand. Her Georgia accent thickened slightly, a tactical choice that put witnesses at ease before she struck. Mrs. Wright, you testified that Judge Cole abandoned you, is that correct? Yes, Celeste dabbed her eyes. I have here visitation logs from 1993 through 2008. Amelia approached the witness stand. Your signatures appear on 10 occasions in 15 years. 10 visits to your daughter in 15 years. Would you characterize that as maternal devotion? Celeste's joy tightened. Those logs don't show the times I was turned away. Interesting. Amelia selected another document. I also have emails from your account to Judge Cole. The 12th of May, 2001, can't make Mackenzie's recital. Send money for the Manhattan apartment deposit. The 23rd of December, 2006, Christmas visit impossible this year. The Aspen house where renting won't allow children. The 8th of September, 2012, Mackenzie's high school graduation conflicts with our Mediterranean cruise. Each date hammered against the courtroom silence. Behind me, someone gasped. And this handwritten note from Judge Cole. Amelia displayed the document on the screen. Franklin's precise script read, broken promises again. Mackenzie waited by the window until midnight. How do I explain this time? The tears on my mother's cheeks were real now, anger, not sorrow. The courtroom shifted subtly, like an ocean current changing direction. Martha Pullman, grandmother's housekeeper for 30 years, took the stand next. After Mrs. Cole passed, Mackenzie never missed a Sunday, Martha testified. Even during law school finals, she'd drive from Duke on Saturday night, help the judge with his medications, attend church with him Sunday morning, and prepare dinner before driving back. And the plaintiffs? Amelia asked. Mrs. Wright called twice a year. Maybe. Always about money. Mr. Wright? Martha sniffed. Never heard his voice in that house. Neighbors followed the Petersons, who watched me shovel Franklin's walkway after every snowfall. Dr. Williams, who taught me to drive in the church parking lot when my parents forgot my 16th birthday. Professor Harmon, who supervised my law school thesis while I cared for my grandfather after his hip surgery. Judge Avery's pen moved steadily across his legal pad. He looked up when my mentor from Duke Law took the stand. Mackenzie worked through weekends to maintain her class standing while visiting her grandfather every Sunday, Professor Montgomery testified. When other students took spring break trips, she drove to Charleston to help Judge Cole with his taxes. Did she ever discuss inheritance expectations with you? Amelia asked. Never. Not once. Franklin's financial advisor confirmed I never inquired about the estate, never requested funds beyond my college tuition. The narrative shifted with each testimony, the courtroom sympathy flowing away from Celeste's performance toward the documented reality of 3 decades. During afternoon recess, Amelia touched my shoulder. Gavin's cross-examination next. Ready? I nodded, watching my father across the courtroom. He straightened his tie repeatedly, avoiding eye contact with Mother, whose earlier composure had crumbled into barely contained fury. When proceedings resumed, Gavin Wright took the stand. His expensive suit and carefully styled hair projected success, but his fingers drummed nervously against his thigh. Amelia approached slowly. Mr. Wright, did you attend your daughter's graduation? Silence stretched across the courtroom. He cleared his throat. Which one? The gallery stirred. Someone coughed to cover a laugh. Any of them, Amelia replied evenly. High school? College? Law school. I was traveling for business. The standard excuse of my childhood. Where did Mackenzie attend law school, Mr. Wright? His eyes darted to Celeste, who stared stonily ahead. I believe it was University of South Carolina. It was Duke University Law School. She graduated summa cum laude. Amelia paused. Have you ever visited your daughter's home? The home you're currently suing her for. Not recently. Have you ever visited it? Another painful silence. No. The courtroom murmurs grew louder. Judge Avery tapped his gavel once, a gentle warning. My father's disconnection from my life became starkly evident with each question. He didn't know my address. Couldn't name my closest friends. Didn't recall a single birthday gift he might have sent. Across the room, my mother's facade cracked further. Her knuckles whitened around her purse strap. The performance was failing. The audience turning against her. I sat straight-backed, Grandmother June's voice in my ear. Stand tall like the hibiscus. The strongest flowers emerged from the coldest winters. As the day drew to a close, Richard Dale rose with unexpected energy. Your Honor, we call Dr. James Morrison to the stand. An unfamiliar man walked forward, mid-60s, silver-haired, with wire-rimmed glasses. My stomach tightened. Who is that? I whispered to Amelia. Not in our witness disclosures, she murmured back, flipping through documents. Dale introduced him as Franklin Cole's former physician, claiming he had critical testimony about grandfather's mental state during his final years. Judge Avery frowned. This witness wasn't on your list, Counselor. Recent discovery, Your Honor. Critical to establishing Judge Cole's vulnerability to undue influence. Amelia objected immediately, but Judge Avery allowed limited testimony in the interest of complete examination. As the man settled into the witness chair, I noticed something familiar. A nervous habit of adjusting his glasses with his middle finger rather than his index finger. The same odd gesture I'd seen years ago at a medical conference where grandfather spoke. Don't worry, Amelia whispered as Dale approached his surprise witness. Trust the preparation. I nodded, watching Dr. Morrison's hands. He adjusted his glasses again, middle finger pushing at the bridge. A memory surfaced. Grandmother June's voice, gentle but firm. Remember, Mackenzie, truth doesn't need rehearsal. I leaned forward, studying the doctor's nervous mannerisms as he began to speak about memory issues and suggestibility in my grandfather's final years. There's something else familiar here, something I can't quite place. Judge Avery watched the new witness with narrowed eyes. The courtroom held its breath. And suddenly, I knew exactly who this man was. The courtroom fell silent as Dr. William Barrett adjusted his bow tie, his fingers trembling slightly against the polished wood of the witness stand. My mother smiled with that particular curve of her lips I'd seen since childhood, the expression that accompanied her confidence in getting exactly what she wants. Dr. Barrett, how long did you treat Judge Franklin Cole? Richard Dale's voice carried that practiced sincerity that sounds hollow to anyone who's spent time in courtrooms. Barrett cleared his throat. I saw Judge Cole twice in the months before his passing. And during those visits, did you observe any signs that might indicate Judge Cole was being manipulated? My muscles tensed. Amelia placed her hand over mine beneath the table, a gentle warning to maintain composure. Objection. Calls for speculation, Amelia stated, her Georgia lilt more pronounced when she was irritated. Judge Avery's silver eyebrows drew together. I'll allow it, but tread carefully, Mr. Dale. Barrett nodded eagerly. Yes, I observed several concerning signs. The judge seemed confused about his finances. He mentioned feeling pressured regarding decisions about his estate. From the corner of my eye, I caught Mother's theatrical nod, her handkerchief making another appearance. Amelia rose slowly, buttoning her jacket with deliberate calm. Dr. Barrett, you mentioned seeing Judge Cole twice. Would you share the specific dates of those appointments? March 12th and April 3rd of last year. And what was your relationship with Judge Cole before these appointments? Barrett shifted. I hadn't treated him previously. So, you weren't his primary physician? No, but... When did you open your practice in Charleston, Dr. Barrett? He swallowed visibly. 8 months ago. With whom did you establish this practice? Dale stood. Objection. Relevance. Goes to credibility, Your Honor, Amelia responded. Overruled. The witness will answer. Barrett's collar suddenly seemed too tight. With Dr. Thomas Reynolds. And what is Dr. Reynolds' relationship to Celeste Wright? The courtroom stirred. Barrett's gaze darted toward Mother before answering. He's her cousin. Amelia nodded once, retrieving a file from her table. I'd like to enter into evidence. Exhibit 43, Your Honor. These are Judge Cole's complete medical records from his primary physician of 30 years, Dr. Harold Simmons. Dale launched to his feet. Objection. Those records weren't provided during discovery. They absolutely were, Your Honor. Page 211 of our disclosure packet, submitted 2 months ago. Amelia didn't even glance at Dale as she spoke. Judge Avery leafed through a folder. Objection overruled. Records were properly disclosed. Amelia approached Barrett with a stack of documents. These records show that Dr. Simmons performed a complete cognitive assessment of Judge Cole just 1 week after your second appointment. Would you please read his conclusion on page 4, paragraph 2? Barrett's voice wavered. Cognitive function remains sharp and consistent with previous evaluations. Patient demonstrates excellent recall of recent and distant events. No evidence of confusion or impairment in decision-making capacity. Thank you, Dr. Barrett. Amelia placed another document before him. Now, could you please explain this prescription you wrote for Judge Cole during your second visit? Barrett paled. It's for a mild sedative. Was this medication requested by Judge Cole? Not exactly. Who suggested this medication, Dr. Barrett? His eyes flicked toward Mother again. Mrs. Wright expressed concern about her father's anxiety. Yet Dr. Simmons' notes indicate Judge Cole reported no anxiety symptoms at his appointment the following week. Interesting. Amelia turned toward the bench. No further questions for this witness. Dale rose for redirect, but Barrett's testimony had unraveled beyond repair. Each question only deepened the hole. Mother scribbled furious notes, passing them to Dale, who barely glanced at them before sighing. Father leaned toward Mother, whispering something that made her face flush crimson. They've started to fracture, each blaming the other for the collapsing case. The defense calls Mackenzie Wright, Amelia announced. Taking the stand felt surreal, as if I was floating outside my body. I adjusted the collar of my blouse, grateful for the extra starch Martha had insisted on this morning. That judge needs to see you solid as bedrock, she'd said while pressing it. After I was sworn in, Amelia approached. Miss Wright, there have been insinuations that you manipulated your grandfather for financial gain. If that were true, wouldn't there have been easier ways to secure his money than spending every Sunday for 30 years at his dinner table? Yes. My voice came out steadier than expected. I'm a prosecutor with a comfortable salary. If I'd wanted his money, I wouldn't have spent 3 decades of Sundays listening to stories about cases from 1972. A few quiet chuckles rippled through the courtroom. Did that Sunday dinner tradition change after your grandmother passed away? I swallowed around the sudden thickness in my throat. Only in one way. I started bringing the lemon poppy seed cake instead of her making it. Everything else stayed the same, 6 o'clock sharp, classical music on the radio, and grandfather's stories. And why did you maintain this tradition? The answer is simple. I stayed because I loved him. Dale stood for cross-examination, his confidence visibly diminished since the morning. Miss Wright, isn't it true that you influenced your grandfather's decision to change his will after your grandmother's death? No. His will was changed 10 years ago, when grandmother was still alive. They made the decision together. But you discussed the will with him? He discussed it with me. He was a judge for 40 years, Mr. Dale. No one influenced Franklin Cole to do anything he didn't believe was right. Dale tried another angle. You were aware of the contents of the will? Yes. Grandfather believed in transparency. He showed me the will and explained that he and grandmother had decided to leave their estate to me, rather than to parents who had chosen not to be part of my life. From the gallery, I heard several people murmuring in agreement. Judge Avery made no move to silence them. My boss, District Attorney Robert Langston, took the stand next, his imposing frame making the witness chair look too small. I've supervised Mackenzie Wright for 6 years, he stated without prompting. She's prosecuted financial crimes worth millions. If there were a prosecutor in my office I'd trust with my own estate, it would be her. Her integrity is beyond reproach. Judge Avery nodded, then spoke directly from the bench. I've known Franklin Cole for nearly 30 years. He mentored me when I joined the judiciary. In all that time, I never once saw him make a decision that wasn't thoroughly considered and ethically sound. Dale's objection came too late and without conviction. The judge simply noted it for the record without acknowledging it further. During the afternoon recess, I stepped into the hallway for air and overheard my father's harsh whisper to my mother near the water fountain. You pushed this too far, Celeste. Barrett was a disaster. Barrett. How was I supposed to know they'd have those records? Thomas said. Thomas said. Your whole family talks big but delivers nothing. My mother spotted me and fell silent, pulling my father away by his sleeve. When court reconvened, Richard Dale requested a conference with Amelia. They spoke in hushed tones at the side of the courtroom before approaching the bench together. After a brief discussion with Judge Avery, they returned to their respective tables. Amelia leaned close. They're offering to drop the suit if you'll pay their legal fees. I shook my head once. No. She squeezed my hand. Good. That's what I told them. My mother sat ramrod straight at the plaintiff's table, but the cracks in her facade had widened. Her cousin, seated 3 rows back, stared fixedly at his shoes rather than meeting Barrett's questioning gaze from across the room. Judge Avery cleared his throat. Based on the testimony and evidence presented today, I'm prepared to issue a ruling unless counsel has additional witnesses. Dale rose. No additional witnesses, Your Honor. Very well. Judge Avery's gaze swept the courtroom before settling on me. Sometimes the law is complicated. This case is not. He continued, his voice resonating with authority. The evidence clearly shows that Franklin Cole was of sound mind when he executed his will, and that his intentions were deliberate and informed. He turned toward my parents. The plaintiffs have failed to provide any credible evidence of undue influence or diminished capacity. Their claim is dismissed with prejudice. Thwack. The gavel fell, sharp and final. My mother's face contorted with fury, but it was my father who surprised me. For just a moment, something like relief crossed his features before the mask of indignation returned. As people filed out of the courtroom, Amelia gathered her papers. Your grandfather would be proud. I nodded, unable to speak past the knot in my throat. The victory brought no joy, only quiet vindication and the certainty that grandfather and grandmother's legacy remained intact. They stayed when it mattered. And in honoring their choice today, so did I. Celeste cornered me outside the 3rd-floor bathroom, her Chanel perfume creating an invisible barrier between us. The courthouse hallway stretched empty in both directions. Mackenzie. Her voice lacked the practiced warmth she used in the courtroom. We should talk. I straightened my charcoal suit jacket, a shield against whatever manipulation came next. About? This division. She stepped closer, her diamond earrings catching the fluorescent light. You might have the law and money on your side, but I have your blood. The word blood hung between us like an accusation. I thought of grandfather's handwritten journals, documenting each missed birthday, each broken promise, each time my mother chose absence over presence. Would your grandmother want this? Celeste whispered, her perfectly manicured hand reaching toward my arm, but stopping short. June was all about family unity, about forgiveness. My throat tightened at the casual invocation of grandmother's name. Celeste barely knew her own mother in adulthood. We could end this today, she continued, misreading my silence as hesitation. I'm willing to forgive and forget everything if you'll simply split the inheritance. 50-50, that's fair, isn't it? Mother and daughter sharing equally. Her eyes, identical to mine in shape and color, scanned my face for weakness, for the little girl who once waited by the mailbox for cards that rarely came. Think about the community, she pressed. Everyone's talking. The pastor at Trinity called me yesterday about the tragedy of family division. I almost laughed. Pastor Roberts had called me too, his concern genuine after 3 decades of watching me sit beside grandfather in the 4th pew every Easter Sunday. The Charleston Post is running a piece next week, Celeste added. Family against family, is that what you want your legacy to be? What about the Cole family reputation? Before I could answer, Richard Dale rounded the corner. Judge Avery's returning in 5 minutes. Celeste's gaze hardened. Think about it, Mackenzie. Blood matters in this town, always has. She and Dale disappeared down the hall, leaving me alone with the echo of her words and the weight of 32 years of carefully documented absence. I pushed open the bathroom door and stood before the mirror, studying my reflection. Gray eyes, straight nose, firm chin, all inherited from a woman who considered motherhood an inconvenience. But there was something else. Something June cultivated through quiet Saturday mornings in the garden when she taught me to transplant hibiscus shoots with gentle hands. Life still blossoms, she'd say, even after someone leaves. I saw June's strength reflected back at me now. And I heard grandfather's voice, clear as it was during our last Sunday dinner. Integrity isn't what you claim, Mackenzie. It's what you demonstrate. The bathroom door swung open and Amelia stepped inside. Her eyes met mine in the mirror. She studied my expression and nodded once. You've made your decision. I turned from the mirror, straightening my shoulders the way grandfather did before delivering a verdict. Truth over peace. Good. Amelia held the door. Because your grandfather's journals just arrived from his chambers. Judge Avery granted our motion despite Dale's objections. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation when we entered. The gallery had swelled with Charleston's old guard, come to witness the final act of our family drama. I glimpsed familiar faces, neighbors who watched me grow up, law colleagues, even Pastor Roberts sitting in the back row with his well-worn Bible. Celeste and Gavin whispered urgently to Dale as Judge Avery took his seat. My father's expensive tie was slightly askew, his first visible sign of discomfort since the trial began. Closing arguments, Avery announced, nodding toward Dale. Richard Dale buttoned his suit jacket as he approached the bench. Your Honor, this case ultimately transcends legal technicalities. It's about blood, about family, about a mother seeking to restore her rightful place in her daughter's life through the inheritance that should flow naturally from father to daughter. He gestured toward the gallery. The community understands this. Charleston traditions honor family unity above all. We've heard from respected community members, Pastor Roberts, family friends, even Mackenzie's childhood neighbors, all urging reconciliation. Dale's voice rose passionately. Celeste Wright may have made mistakes as a young mother, but what parent hasn't? Should those mistakes cost her everything? Should a mere legal document override the sanctity of blood relations? Judge Avery's expression remained impassive as Dale concluded with an appeal to tradition and blood over cold legal documents. When Amelia rose, she carried only a single sheet of paper. Your Honor, this case has never been about blood. It's about choice. About who stays. She unfolded the paper carefully. This letter was found in Judge Franklin Cole's desk, dated 2 weeks before his death. With the court's permission, I'd like to read it. Avery nodded, and Amelia began reading in her measured Georgia accent. Mackenzie, you inherit not because of blood, but because you stayed. When Sunday dinners became difficult for me after June passed, you never missed one. When law school demanded your weekends, you studied at my kitchen table. When Celeste and Gavin asked for money, which the bank records show exceeded $845,000 over 22 years, they never once asked about you. The courtroom fell silent as she continued. A parent isn't defined by biology but by presence. I choose you as my heir because you chose me as your family. Every Sunday, every holiday, every ordinary day when showing up mattered. She placed the letter on the exhibit table and turned to face the judge. Evidence, Your Honor, not emotion, should govern this court's decision. The evidence shows decades of financial support to the plaintiffs alongside their consistent absence. It shows Franklin Cole's mental acuity until his final days, confirmed by medical records. And it shows a lifetime of Sundays when Mackenzie Wright chose to stay while her parents chose to leave. Amelia looked directly at Celeste and Gavin. What kind of parents sue their own child after abandoning her? What kind of mother invokes family unity after 3 decades of documented absence? The question before this court isn't about blood. It's about the true definition of family. I felt tears press against my eyelids as Amelia returned to her seat. Beside me, she placed a tissue. I squeezed it tight but didn't use it. Not yet. Judge Avery removed his glasses, polishing them slowly with a handkerchief. The courtroom remained hushed, holding its collective breath. Having reviewed all evidence and testimony presented in this case, he began. I find the will of the Honorable Franklin Cole to be valid and executed with sound mind and full legal capacity. He replaced his glasses, looking directly at Celeste and Gavin. The plaintiff's claim is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, the plaintiff shall pay the defendant's reasonable attorney fees, as permitted under state law, for frivolous lawsuits without substantial justification. The gavel struck with finality, echoing across the courtroom. This court is adjourned. Only then did I allow the tears to fall, not for the inheritance secured or the lawsuit defeated, but for the validation of a truth I'd always known. Family isn't determined by blood running through veins, but by feet that walk toward you when others walk away. Celeste and Gavin rose quickly, avoiding my gaze as they followed Dale through the side door. No final words, no acknowledgement, just departure, the one consistent action they'd shown throughout my life. Amelia squeezed my shoulder once. "Justice served," she whispered. "Your grandfather would be proud." I nodded, unable to speak past the knot in my throat. The courtroom emptied slowly, murmurs fading like receding tides. I remained seated, watching sunlight filter through tall windows onto the empty plaintiff's table. The inheritance mattered less than what it represented. Recognition that family is defined by who stays when leaving is easier. And for 32 years, through scraped knees and law school graduations, through grandmother's funeral and quiet Sunday dinners, my grandparents stayed. I gathered my portfolio with steady hands. Tomorrow, I'd visit their graves with fresh hibiscus cuttings from the garden they taught me to tend. Tonight, I'd bake grandmother's lemon poppy seed cake and eat it alone at their kitchen table. Some would call it victory. I call it vindication. And somewhere, I know grandfather and grandmother are calling it justice. The nameplate on my office door still catches me off guard sometimes. The Honorable Mackenzie Wright gleams in polished brass against dark mahogany. 1 year as South Carolina's youngest state judge hasn't dulled the quiet pride that rises in my chest each morning. I smooth my charcoal skirt as I settle behind the bench, studying the faces before me. Another inheritance dispute. Another daughter claiming her mother favored a grandchild unfairly. Another echo of my own story played out with different characters. Mrs. Reynolds claims her mother was manipulated into changing her will, the plaintiff's attorney states, his voice carrying the same entitled certainty Richard Dale once used. The defendant, her daughter Beth, took advantage. Objection, Your Honor. Prejudicial characterization. Beth's attorney rises. Sustained. My voice carries Franklin's measured cadence. Counsel, restrict yourself to facts, not conclusions. Later, I watch the Reynolds women avoid eye contact across the courtroom, the same cold gulf I once faced with Celeste, the daughter who left versus the granddaughter who stayed. When court adjourns, I retreat to my chambers where Franklin's legal volumes line one wall. I run my fingers across their worn spines, touchstones of continuity. His penciled notes still mark important passages, little breadcrumbs of wisdom left behind. My phone buzzes with Martha's weekly text, hibiscus blooming like crazy. Bring home cuttings? Martha refused to retire after Franklin passed. This house needs people who remember, she'd insisted, continuing to dust the photographs that chronicle a life without Celeste and Gavin. The lemon poppy seed bundt cake waits on my counter every Saturday, Martha following June's recipe with religious precision. Some traditions shouldn't end, even when the people who started them are gone. I no longer waste energy wondering if Celeste will call on my birthday. The space once reserved for parental approval has been filled with something sturdier, a chosen family of courthouse colleagues, law school friends, and neighbors who gather around my table each Sunday, continuing Franklin's dinner tradition. Judge Wright. My clerk appears at the door. Your 4 o'clock custody hearing is ready. The Anderson case. My heart tightens. A 5-year-old boy caught between warring parents, his father showing up only when convenient. I straighten Franklin's fountain pen on my blotter before rising. In the courtroom, I study the child's drawings submitted as evidence. Stick figures labeled Mommy and Grandma stand beside a house. No father appears. Mr. Anderson, I address the father directly. Children don't remember what we say. They remember who showed up. The words spread across the courtroom like ripples in still water. The father's eyes widen in recognition. Perhaps something will change for this child. That evening, I drive to Magnolia Cemetery as sunset gilds the weathered tombstones. I kneel between two graves, placing fresh hibiscus blossoms, vibrant crimson against pale marble. I kept my promise, I whisper to June's headstone, laying a slice of lemon cake wrapped in wax paper. I protected what you built. Wind rustles through the live oaks overhead. Here, kneeling between the people who chose me every day for 32 years, gratitude finally outweighs grief. The Reynolds case ended today, I tell Franklin's grave. The granddaughter inherited. Truth prevailed. A cardinal lands on a nearby branch, brilliant red against the darkening sky. I remember June pointing them out. When they visit, someone you love is checking on you. I rise, brushing grass from my skirt. Their legacy continues not just in property or possessions, but in every fair ruling, every child protected, every truth honored. Family is who stays, I whisper, and walk toward home.